Fellas and gentlecolts, I welcome you to part 2 of Princess Molestia. Let's begin. Thank you oh so much again, Twilight, for helping me with the Crusaders. I can't imagine what would have happened if had you or Fluttershy had not showed up. Oh, it's no problem, Rarity. We're just glad to help. Well, we sure as sugar do appreciate y'all giving us a hoof. Maybe there's something we can do to make up for you. Oh, idea! I hate that thing. Rarity announced as she raised a hoof proudly. Since Fluttershy is letting the Crusaders sleep over at her place again, how about I take you both over to my place for a sleepover of our own? Well, shucks, that sounds like a pretty good plan, don't you think, Twi? Applejack said. Well, it'll be all fun and all, but Spike is still asleep upstairs, Twilight claimed, hesitation in her voice. It's really late and I'm sure enough if I should leave him alone for the night. Oh, don't worry, darling. I'm sure Alvalicious won't mind looking over him while he's asleep. Well, I guess it couldn't hurt. I'll head over to the library to let him know to take care of Spike. Then I'll be right over, okay, girls? Take your time, Twi. Me and Rarity will get the place set up for you, okay? Oh, alright, sounds great, girls. I'll see you in a bit. With that, Twilight Sparkle trotted down from atop the hill in one direction, and as Applejack and Rarity left in another, the night sky above them emanating just enough light for them to find their way in the dark streets of Ponyville. It did not take long for Twilight to reach the library, and it took even a shorter time for her to gather a few things and let Owlicious know of her plans for that night. After her short preparations, Twilight left the library and headed straight for Rarity's home, a smile on her face with high expectations for the night she was about to have. Inside the library, it was pitch black, the perfect environment for a night owl. What's more, Twilight wasn't going to be home, and Spike was already fast asleep in the room upstairs. A perfect opportunity for some late-night hunting. Owlicious took flight and headed up to one of the openable windows, gently using his wing to creak it open just enough for him to fly out towards the edge of Everfree for a late-night snack. It was just a quick trip, and he would probably be back in about 20 minutes or so. What could happen while he was away? Back in the library, the darkness still loomed, and not a single creature lurked or stirred in the dead of night. It was only a minute or so after Owlicious left, however. The calming darkness was interrupted by a loud thud coming from the balcony of the library. Outside, a set of footsteps could be heard, and then the door to the balcony opened magically, allowing entrance to a dark figure which slid in quietly. The figure seemed to look around slowly, taking careful examination of settling around it. Again it moved slowly, making its way down from the balcony and towards the opposite side of the library. The figure was that of a pony, except larger, with its mane lightly sparkling in the darkness. There was also a very quiet yet distant chatter coming from the figure, as if it were the sound of jittery teeth from a freezing pony. The figure continued on, now reaching the bottom of the stairs to the bedroom above. It examined the stairs for a quick moment before beginning its ascension. Slowly and quietly moving up towards the door, as it reached the top, a figure abruptly stopped and listened closely. There was a sound on the other side. The sound of what? Was it snoring? It was now apparent that the rhythmic sounds coming from the other side of the was obviously that of a light snoring. The figure faced the door directly, and a long yet thin cone on its head began to shine with magic. The door opened and the figure entered slowly, taking care to be even more quiet than before. It approached the bed and took a second to examine it. Empty! There was no pony sleeping in the bed. However, on the far side of the room, a noticeable lump was rising and falling in a smaller bed, at the exact spot the snoring seemed to be coming from. The figure then began approaching this smaller bed, its cone once again shimmering with magic. The sheets that were originally covering the lump slowly began to slide off, revealing a purple and green scaled body resting on the bed. As the figure drew even closer, the small dragon began to stir slightly, obviously reacting to having its covers taken away. You want to continue, Cameron?
Sure. Where's my blankie? Spike mumbled softly, having been inexplicably hit with a cold rush of air. His eyes still closed. He reached his claws around for his blanket, but couldn't find it anywhere on one side. He checked the other side, but again, the blanket wasn't there. Did it slide off the bed? Spike didn't know, but his slumber was now fully disturbed. He shivered lightly, another soft yet cool blow of air whisking against his scales. Spike shivered slightly, and hope, excuse me, and hoped dearly he could find his blanket soon, or else he would have to actually get up to look for it. Another blow of air, except this one was warmer. Spike didn't notice at first and continued to irritatedly claw around for his beloved blanket, eager to get back to sleep. Another blow of air, this time much more noticeable and a bit warmer as well. Spike stopped. Was there a heater in here? He didn't remember Twilight putting one in. As he thought for another moment, a third blow of air came in, this one stronger and hotter than the others. Spike could now feel a little bit of humidity in the air that was being blown on him, and it finally dawned on him. Ugh, Twilight, are you breathing on me? He said, lazily leaning up in his bed, his right hand scratching his head with his eyes just starting to open. You know, Twilight, I really enjoy sleeping with you without you blowing down my neck. It was at this moment that Spike looked at and saw through the darkness, not Twilight's figure standing before her. Another bright light there blew against him as the cone above the figure's head lit up, revealing its figure with the magically conjured light. Princess Celestia? Spike asked in baffled at the princess's presence. What are you doing in... Spike was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Celestia's tongue, which slithered down and lectured down his stomach all the way up to his chest, gliding across his face, and even his top front spine on his head. Spike froze, his face plastered with shock and disgust as he tried to register exactly what happened. Celestia! Celestia! Spike asked, his voice shaking and now stuttering slightly. His eyes adjusted to the light. He cannot see the princess's face, distorted by a large, wild grin. Her eyes slightly bloodshot with her pupils, withered down into tiny black beads. Her teeth were also jittery, and her bottom lip had a drop of drool slowly slipping down her chin. Spike reared his head back, separately trying to distance himself from this apparent insane figure of what he somehow believed was Princess Celestia. Spike! Celestia finally spoke. The words sending a cold, harsh shiver down Spike's spine. It was her voice, except distorted somehow. Manipulated the sound of whatever like a creature than like the normal elegance it had. Spike started to scoop back. Celestia's piercing gaze began to strike fear into Spike's little heart, as if everything he held inside of him, every piece of what made up his characteristic of being, was suddenly pulled down and being examined by the same eyes that were boring onto him. The princess took a step backward, keeping the distance between the two the same as Spike tried to continue to scoot away. Spike, where is she? The princess said, using the same tone as before. What? What? Spike gulped hard, his voice creaking as his brain tried to feed some sort of words towards his mouth, being blocked by the storm of utter confusion and shock that raged in his mind. What? Where's who? Where's who? Twilight. Celestia replied, adding a large, hearty breath to her word. Where's Twilight Sparkle? My most prized pupil. She's not here. Spike glanced over the Twilight's bed, and sure enough, the bed was empty. Celestia spoke again, sending another moist wave of hot air against Spike's already wet body. No. Now tell me. Well, wait, where is she? Spike was running out of options. Perhaps Twilight had gone out to one of her friends' places, or just went out for a stroll somewhere. At the same time, Spike tried to find his happy place. A place he could go away to and not be in this horrible situation. A place with gems, with meaningful decorations, with all sorts of wondered marble stones, and a large cave with Rarity. Rarity. Maybe Twilight went over to Rarity's place. It surely got the princess out of here, and no! He had to protect Rarity. But he couldn't just sit there and say nothing. The princess might get upset and do something truly not good to him. His mind raced. He tried to think of the one place Twilight could never be, and then maybe no point it would be at this time of night. Each moment, though, he could feel Celestia's breath getting stronger. Each blow of air swirling its hot humidity around him involuntarily beginning to warm his blood. Spike struggled for a solution, for an answer of some sort, somewhere deserted, yet somewhere some pony would obviously go to. Somewhere like, maybe went to Rainbow Dash's place. Celestia raised her head slightly, her eyes breaking away from Spice as she thought to herself. Of course it would be so obvious. Perhaps Twilight was having a sleepover at a friend's house, and if she found her, perhaps there would be more of the man that she could feel at the same time. Rainbow Dash. Celestia said, her body raising slowly as she looked off in the general direction towards Rainbow Dash's helm. After only a few seconds, Celestia turned around and immediately flung herself outside the door, kinetically closing it behind her, then out the library altogether the way she came. Spike slumped down in his bed, now shivering in fear for what he just experienced. He knew that Rainbow Dash may now be in danger, but she was a very traveled pony. Perhaps she could be instead lazily sleeping on some cloud somewhere far away from her home. Maybe she was wherever Twilight was, and that they were off in the Everfree Forest, somewhere exploring some cave. Spike didn't know. He had no way of knowing, but he hoped that he had woke up in the morning, everything would be better, and just pretend this was all a dream. Spike looked over for a quick moment and saw his beloved blanket over the edge of his bed. Just slumped aside, barely out of his regular reach. He leaned over and grabbed it, pulling it over himself as he curled up and snugged against it in his bed. He was still shivering slightly, trying desperately not to think of what happened to him. He went back to his happy place, the gem-filled cave with the marble stones and Rarity cuddled up beside him. The dark figure of Princess Celestia traveled over Ponyville. Her wings spread wide as she flew over the buildings and towards the outskirts of the town. After having flown over and around Ponyville multiple times for previous visits, the one cloud home next to the town managed to stand up in the surrounding landscape. Quickly yet quietly, she flew, keeping her stealth throughout the night as she neared her target. It was already in sight, the home-shaped cloud with the few streams of rainbows flowing off the edge. Celestia flew closer and then greatly sat down on the steps of the house. Celestia approached the door. She moaned as she approached the door, ready to fuck whatever mare was inside. Her hooves slightly and quietly stepping on the soft cloud steps. Her horn lit with magic once more, and the door slowly opened without even the slightest creaking sound, adding to the stealth of her approach. Slowly, she slipped inside, careful not to cause any sort of noise while she began to step in the main room of the home. This house was small, and there was only the main room and a closet on the side, with stairs leading to a balcony section of the home to the left of the entry. Celestia peered to the right and noticed the bed against the wall. Slowly she approached, peering through the darkness to see any lumps in the covers, to see any sign of a pony, mane or hoof or tail, but there was none. Celestia lit up her horn and brought a small amount of light to the room. Yet the place was empty, deserted. Nothing was here. Celestia cursed her luck under her breath and just started to run around, when suddenly a voice rang out through the night. "Oh, Dashy!" sounded the high-pitched squeaky voice. What is over your noise? Celestia froze in place. Her beady eyes peered left to right. She had heard that voice before, but where? Rainbow Dash! Are you up there? Yes, of course! It was the sound of the party man, the pink one. Are you up there? Sound of the pink. Yes. Are you up there, Dashy? Pinkie Pie called from the front below the cloud house. I saw some colors fly through the sky, so I thought it might be you. Are you out doing some late night pranking without me? Without me? Celestia poked her head out over the steps of the cloud and home, able to see the dark figure of Pinkie Pie standing below. Oh, there you are, Dashy! Pinkie Pie exclaimed excitedly. Though she was unable to make out the dark figure of a head sticking out over the clouds, she immediately assumed it was indeed Rainbow Dash. So, you were awake? Aha, I was right, wasn't I? You tricky, sneaky Dashy, you. Twilight Sparkle was not here, nor was Rainbow Dash. But Pinkie Pie was one of the Twilight's closest friends, one of the ones Celestia most dearly wanted to feel against her. Though she hadn't found her student yet, the pink woman had to suffice for now. Hey, come on down here, Dashy. I want to tell you some of the pranks you did. The dark figure with Pinkie Pie soon to be Rainbow Dash, who threw it back against the clouds. How about you, Nate? How about you take over?
All right.
The dark figure which Pinkie assumed to be Rainbow Dash withdrew back behind the clouds, as if ignoring her desires completely. Pinkie huffed lightly. Yes, before she could call out again, the figure reappeared over the edge, with its full body present and its wings spread out. At first Pinkie's face lit up with glee, but the next moment she realized that the figure was too large to be Rainbow Dash. What's more, the figure had hooves, so it wasn't Gilda or anyone like that. To add on this, the figure was growing in size rapidly, meaning that it was coming down right on top of her. Celestia pounced on top of Pinkie Pie, sending her falling to her back below her. Pinkie grunted slightly from the impact, but quickly looked around her to see the figure having her pinned and standing over her. As if triumphant, Pinkie was utterly confused. There was no pony she knew as big as this. Not Rainbow Dash, not Ditzy, not Cloud Kicker, or Flacky. Just no one. The only creature in all of Equestria with this kind of form was...
Princess Celestia?
Pinkie asked, her voice riddled with confusion.
Yes, my sweet child?
Celestia replied, her voice aired with the same disturbance as she used to confront Spike with. What are you doing here? Pinkie questioned again, oblivious to the strange sound in Celestia's voice. Then her face lit up as one probable reason to jump into her head, and she gasped out in surprise. Ooh, Princess, are you personally inviting me to a party? I would love to go. If Pinkie Pie wasn't pinned, she would surely be hopping with joy right now, barely able to contain the excitement that was built up inside of her. Celestia, however, brought some light to her horn and began to illuminate the area around them. At first, Pinkie made "ooh" sounds as she saw her, and Celestia lit up. But her vibrant smile and happy demeanor quickly faded as she looked straight into Celestia's eyes. Those same wide, bloodshot, beady black eyes gazed back towards Pinkie's, doing the same thing they had done with Spike, Luna, and the two guards earlier that night. At first, though, Pinkie stared at Celestia with only the slightest frown. Then she actually began to giggle, thinking this was some sort of game or a playful attempt to scare her. But the giggling also faded as Pinkie felt a weird sensation on her tail. Looking down, she could see Celestia's tail brushing up and down her own, stroking the length with its tip, while it gently guided over. Princess Celestia, what are you doing? Pinkie asked, before looking to see that Celestia had moved her face up to hers, their noses now touching and her eyes once more connected to her own. This time Pinkie couldn't look away. Her gaze was fixated towards the source of the Celestia's gaze as her beady eyes struck down the stair that seemed to shoot down like a bolt of lightning, sending it straight into Pinkie's head and mind and probing around every corner of the section of her brain. The same bolt traveled through her body, sending a cold, painful shiver that suddenly brought fear into Pinkie's heart. Celestia's tail slid upward, traveling up to Pinkie's rear and stroking it gently. At the same time, her mane lowered down and wrapped itself around Pinkie's mane, stroking it up and down from the tip to where it connected with her head. Celestia's gaze stayed fixated on Pinkie's eyes, using it like some sort of paralysis beam for her victims. Pinkie's body felt cold, and no longer she could feel any sort of happiness or joy that she felt earlier, or only this foreign, strange feeling that now pulled through her body from where Celestia's mane was touching her. Soon, Celestia began to lower her body down towards Pinkie's, her tail now sliding around and guiding around her haunches and just under Pinkie's lower tummy. No, wait, stop it! Pinkie suddenly cried, her eyes closing in order to break away from the cold, terrifying gaze that Celestia was using it on her. She quickly rolled over form under Celestia and tried to press upward to a full stand, but the princess was already bearing her body down on top of her. Desperate, she tried to push herself out and make a run for it, but the princess suddenly applied more pressure as the weight of her body came down on top of her, pinning her on her own stomach. She tried sliding back under, perhaps able to slip away like that, but all she was able to get free was her rear, which stuck out and upwards from behind her. Celestia could feel Pinkie struggling. and that only made her lust grow as she felt the small pink pony squirming to get free underneath. The feel of a pink one's body rubbing and wriggling up against her, the pleasure was maddening. Her muscles tensed, and after a moment she pressed her own body down and began to roughly grind against the pink one's. Her tail flung down and gripped herself around her subject's waist, keeping her rear stuck up high, while Celestia used her haunches to rub and grind up against them. Simultaneously, Celestia's hair shot down towards Pinky's head, splitting as they reached, with one half of the hair sliding around the left side, while the other half to the right. Pinky gasped out as Celestia's hair traveled down, but before she could close her mouth, the hair acting like it was some sort of living tentacle. Sorry.
Japan! Or in fish! Anyway,
Slid
this guy's
down,
a sick bastard.
I guess. Slid down and up into her mouth, forcing her mouth open and pulsating towards her throat. She gagged slightly, now having to breathe through her nose, and her mouth was filled up while her back and rear were being harshly rubbed by Celestia's coat. There wasn't enough force to crush her. Pinky knew that with Celestia's size that might be possible, but there is certainly a nearly overwhelming force bearing down on her, with every powerful grind sending a strong pulse through the length of her body and all around all corners and edges. Want to keep going, dude?
Sure. Pinky's legs were shaking as Celestia has been dominating her now for about a minute. Her attempts to escape only seemed to feed Celestia's strength and made the overwhelming pulses grow stronger, which held the strangest yet almost pleasurable sensation to them. At first, Pinky's back was on fire, but that flame quickly seemed to melt through her coat, bringing a moist warmth throughout her entire body, now making her almost instinctively move in sync with the grinding motion from above her. Now that the slick hair in her mouth has begun pushing down her throat, saying in two distinguishable twirls of hair that represented the bit entering from the left side of the mouth and the bit entering from the right. The two slimy bundles pushed and right themselves in further, their writing in sync with the grinding of Celestia's whole body, adding more to the intense sensation that rocked her down to her very core. Even Celestia's tail itself was foaming around her waist in perfect synchronization, keeping her rump held high and her haunches elongated and exposed while Celestia's powerful hips pulsed rightfully against her, adding the final bit to the overwhelming pleasurable sensation that constantly reverberated through Pinky's entire being. Unable to control herself, with a sudden passage available from the two inseparable lobes of hair in her mouth and down her throat, Pinky let out a loud, sensational moan that had mustered itself from the deepest parts of her body. After the moan, the two tentacle-like pieces of hair gradually slid out under her and stroking her own hot wetness down to her chest and tummy, coaxing almost every bit of her throat. The pleasure only increased, and Pinky felt let out another louder moan, another one even more after that. Each moan came at every other thrust down into her, keeping her with the rhythm of this overwhelmingly source of unimaginable pleasure. It felt as though Pinky had thrown the biggest, most wonderful party in all of Equestria, and the beat of the party matched the rhythm that Celestia was using to grind down on top of her. Minutes passed, and Pinky had begun sweating heavily earlier on, her coat wet and sliding more smoothly against Celestia's. Even so, the continual rush of this heavy sensation had sapped all the energy Pinkie Pie had, and long before she eventually collapsed onto the floor, gasping heavily, her mind scrambled with an uncontrollable number of mixed feelings, and her body worn out by the intense wet heat that still coursed through her veins, making her whole body twitch and spasm uncontrollably. Pinkie couldn't go on any longer. She very quickly found her eyes shutting and falling into a deep sleep. Celestia rose slowly off the warm, soaping mess under her that had finally become exhausted and fallen fast asleep. Unfortunately, Celestia herself had had nearly as much pleasure as she wanted, though the pink one did provide a good source of temporary fun. She looked up toward the sky and saw the moon that was relatively high in the night sky. She still had a target, one pressing goal that she had to reach, and this point was only the start of things. Her mind traveled around for a bit as she pondered her next destination. She now knew that Rainbow Dash was not home, and with Pinky here, the others would not be at her home at Circuit Cube Corner. That left only Fluttershy's cottage, Rarity's Carousel Boutique, and the Apple family house. The cottage in question housed Fluttershy and a bunch of small little creatures, which did not meet up to Celestia's size. Thank God. Thank freaking God. The cottage in question housed Fluttershy and a bunch of... Oh, shit. I'm sorry. The boutique had Rarity and Sweetie Belle, yet the Apple House would have the old Mayor, Granny Smith, and Big Macintosh, and more importantly, Applejack. Even if there were only those few, it was far more of a boundary than the other two destinations, and it may just be where Twilight Sparkle was. Celestia looked down below her. The pink coat one now curled up and sleeping soundly. The time with her was over, and Celestia now had more pressing matters to attend to. She extended her wings and propelled herself off the ground, soaring to the sky, heading all the way across town towards Sweet Apple Acres. Your turn, Nate.
In the solitude of her room, Luna slowly and lazily woke up, her body stiff and not wanting to respond to her orders. Her mind was in a daze, and it was hard for her to remember much. She looked out of the window and saw it was night time. Through it that perhaps she had just taken a nap from a hard night of studying equestrian tax laws. Then she looked at the calendar and saw the date set to April 1st. April 1st? But that means... Suddenly Luna gasped out loudly as the events from earlier that night all came crashing into her mind like a runaway freight train. The prank, the spell, the light, the guards, Celestia! Oh my, where is she? Luna looked around the room frantically, wishing in vain that the princess would be right here. However, she was nowhere in sight, and that the last thing her older sister said to her before she passed out suddenly popped into her mind. Twilight Sparkle, she repeated aloud. She needed to go find her and keep her away from her sister, but first she needed to get some help. Celestia was far too powerful for her, especially in the overwhelmingly dominant stage she was in now. Luna thought for a moment, and then came up with her first idea. I need to round up guards, Luna said to herself, realizing that they were probably her best bet at subduing the princess. Luna gathered herself and organized her thoughts for a few seconds, and then took off down the hall, hoping to find as many guards as she could and get them down to Ponyville to save Twilight Sparkle and her friends before it was too late.